Nadia had always been an adventurous soul, searching for excitement in the mundane corners of life. This time, her curiosity led her to a remote village. The wedding was to be held in an old abandoned mansion that the groom had supposedly renovated just for the occasion. Excited, Nadia put on her best dress and decided to go alone, as her friends were busy with other plans. When she arrived, the place gave her chills. The lighting was dim and unsettling, and the music sounded muffled, as though it came from far away. The guests wore strange, old-fashioned clothes, and no one smiled or spoke. They just stared at Nadia with unsettling, piercing eyes. Trying to brush off the weird atmosphere, she sat in the back row. Suddenly, she noticed something strange on the stage. The bride and groom looked blurry, as if they were surrounded by a mist. The music began to slow, morphing into something distorted, almost like distant screaming. Nadia felt the ground beneath her trembling, and caught a whiff of something burning. Suddenly, the groom stood up and spoke in a voice that was deep and unnatural, almost like two voices overlapping. "Thank you all for joining us tonight. Now let the real celebration begin." At that moment, the lights went out completely. When they flickered back on, the guests around Nadia had transformed into horrifying figures. Their eyes glowed red, their faces were cracked and distorted, and their hands were unnaturally long. The stage had disappeared, replaced by a massive pit of fire. The bride and groom stood at its edge, their forms now demonic and ghastly. Terrified, Nadia tried to run, but her legs felt paralyzed, as though rooted to the ground. One of the creatures, with a twisted, menacing face, leaned close to her and whispered in a chilling voice, "Tonight, you are our guest, and you will never leave." Nadia screamed as loud as she could, and suddenly, everything went silent. She woke up lying by the side of an empty road, her dress torn, and the mansion nowhere to be found. But as she tried to calm down and make sense of what had happened, she felt a burning pain on her hand. Looking down, she saw a strange mark, like a demon's face etched into her skin, almost like a tattoo. She tried to ignore it, but the mark grew hotter and started glowing faintly every day, as though it was calling out to someone. One night, as she sat in her room, the lights suddenly went out. That same haunting music from the wedding began to play, and she heard the sound of footsteps approaching her door. The mark on her hand began to burn intensely, glowing red-hot. At that moment, Nadia realized the nightmare wasn't over. They were coming back for her.